Now, in the previous session, we have read the conversation between Dr. Sudhao and General. We understand that the General was very much dependent upon Dr. Sudhao for his medical needs. He believed that Dr. Sudhao had an expertise in his area of skills as a doctor. He was a very skilled surgeon, and he relied upon him. Right? When Dr. Sudhao discussed the general suggested him that he would be sending, in order to help him, he would be sending assassins to his house. They are professional assassins, and he needs to keep the room of the white man's door open. The door should be open, the garden door, so that the assassins would come at night, would kill him, and carry the dead body along with them, so that there is no clue, no evidence left over, and it won't create any sort of problem for Dr. Sudhao. Now, Dr. Sudhao he wanted to get rid of that white man because he understands that as a doctor, he has treated that human, but now ultimately he is his enemy, and his presence in the house may create a trouble for him and his family. Already the servants have left the house, so he doesn't want himself to be arrested and the problem to be increased more. So he wants to get rid of the white man. General promises him that he would be sending assassins to his house. So Dr. Sudhao agrees to it, and he is happy that the general would be sending the assassins, right? So I'm continuing from page number 42. Ankita, please start reading page number 42, first stanza.
It won't bother me much, the young man said. His young face was gaunt under the stubbly blonde beard. Say, doctor, I have something I want to say to you. If I hadn't met a Jap like you, well, I won't be alive today. I know that. Sadao bowed, but he could not speak.
Okay, it won't bother me much, the young man said. His young face was gaunt under the stubby blonde beard. Now it is when that day after meeting the general, Dr. Sudhao comes back to his house. So he finds that the man was almost about to get up and he wants to move outside. So he tells that my arm has got stiff. So doctor, though he had that thought in his mind that I have to keep the garden door open, the door towards the garden open, so that the assassin should come and kill him. But then when he told him his trouble as a doctor, he forgot everything and he just pondered over how to cure his stiff arm, right? So it won't bother me much, the young man said. His young face was gaunt under the stubby blonde beard. Say, doctor, I have got something I want to say to you. If I hadn't met a Jap like you, well, I wouldn't be alive today. I know that. So he said, doctor, in a manner, he was expressing his gratitude towards Dr. Sudhao that he has met a person like him who has helped him and who has saved his life. Please continue further.
Sure, I know that. Tom went on warmly. His big thin hands gripping a chair were white as the knuckles. I guess if all the Japs were like you, there won't have been a war. Perhaps Sadao said with difficulty, and now I think you had better go back to the bed. He helped the boy back into the bed and then bowed. Good night, he said.
Please continue. So nothing to explain in this passage.
Sadao slept badly that night. Time and time again he woke, thinking he heard the rustling of footsteps, the sound of a twig broken or a stone displayed in the garden, a noise such as men might make who carried a burden. The next morning he made the excuse to go first into the guest room. If the American were gone, he then could simply tell Hannah that so the journal had directed. But when he opened the door, he saw at once that there on the pillow was the shaggy blonde head. He could hear the peaceful breathing of sleep, and he closed the door again quietly. He's asleep, he told Hannah. He's almost well to sleep like that. What shall we do with him? Hannah whispered her old refrain. Sadao shook his head. I must decide in a day or two, he promised.
Okay, now obviously Sadao was not able to sleep badly that night. Time and time again, he woke up and he thought that there was be some sound of the rustling of the footsteps or something. So he woke up to have a look whether the assassins have entered into his room and have taken him away. Uh, but there was nothing. Even, I mean, the small sound maybe of a twig falling down from the tree or something disturbed him. The next morning, he made the excuse to go first into the guest room. And if the American were gone, he then could simply tell Hannah that so the general had directed. So he rushed towards a guest room in order to check whether the white man was there or not. But when he opened the door, he saw at once that there on the pillow was a shaggy blonde head. So he saw that the man was still sleeping there. He could hear the peaceful breathing of his sleep and he closed the door again quietly. He's asleep. Now Hannah was worried and he asked her husband again that what should we do with this man? So Dr. Sudhav promised her that within a day or two, he will get rid of him and he will definitely do something about it. Please continue further. But certainly he thought.
But certainly he thought the second night must be the night. There rose a wind that night, and he listened to the sound of bending boughs and whistling partitions. Hannah woke too. Ought we not to go and close the sick man's partition? She asked. No, Sadao said, he is able now to do it for himself. But the next morning the American was still there. Then the third night, of course, must be the night. The wind changed to quiet rain, and the garden was full of the.
Just a moment, please.
was
Continue.
full of was full of the sound of dripping eaves and running springs. Sadao slept a little better, but he woke at the sound of a crash and he leaped to his feet. What was that? Hannah cried. The baby woke at her voice and began to wail. I must go and see. But he held her and would not let her move. Don't, Sadao, she cried. What is the matter with you? Don't go, he muttered. Don't go. His terror infected her and she stood breathless, waiting. There was
Just
only silence.
Ankita, just give a pause, beta. Ankita, continue karo.
His terror infected her and she stood breathless, waiting. There was only silence. Together they crept back into the bed, the baby between them. Yet when he
Okay. Continue with this passage and then give a pause so that I can give you the explanation.
Yet when he opened the door of the guest room in the morning, there was the young man. He was very gay and had already washed and was now on his feet. He had asked for a razor yesterday and had shaved himself, and today there was a faint color in his cheeks.
Okay. Now, night after night, Dr. Sadao slept restlessly. He was feeling very uneasy. The general had promised him that he would be sending assassins at his home, and the assassins would be killing the white man, and they would be carrying the dead body along with them. And that was the way, that was the solution general had offered Dr. Sadao, how to get rid of this white man. Right? So every night, Dr. killing him. But so he was very much bothered even about a small sound, a little disturbance, even when the baby cried, even when there was the rustling of the leaves or falling of the twigs of the tree. He was very alert and abrupt. But nothing of that sort happened. Again, here you will find the character of general is highlighted. We will come to know, we will read this thing in the story afterwards, that the general forgot completely to send the assassins to his house. So Dr. Sudhav was in a big trouble. The general had promised him. General relied upon him. He was very much thankful to the doctor for his services, because he believed that it was because of him that he had survived till now, right? Uh, in spite of so many medical issues, doctor cured him, right? But when doctor was in trouble and he sought help of the general, though he promised him, but he was such a careless man that he forgot to send the assassins at his house, right? Obviously, Dr. Sudhav was worried. He was fearful. I mean, assassins coming to his house, killing somebody, and then that taking away the dead body. It was all very fearful, right? But then doctor ultimately, he realized that he wanted to get rid of this trouble. It was, the white man was a big trouble. The servants had already left the house. Hannah was also worried, and doctor was worried about his name. His reputation was also at stake. So keeping all these things in mind, डॉक्टर ने जनरल से ये प्रॉमिस किया था that he would be sending the assassins. But when the assassins didn't turn up, doctor was more worried, because now he realized that he himself has to look out for a solution, how to get rid of this white man. Ankita, please continue better further.
Just a second. I, I am well, he said joyously. Sadao drew his kimono round his weary body. He could not, he decided silently, go through another night. It was not that he cared for this young man's life. No, simply it was not worth the strain. You are well, Sadao agreed. He lowered his voice. You are so well that I think if I put my boat on the shore tonight, with food and extra clothing in it, you might be able to row to that little island not far from the coast. It is so near the coast that it has not been worth fortifying. Nobody lives on it because in the storm it is submerged. But this is not the season of storm. You could live there until you saw a Korean fishing boat pass by. They pass quite near the island because the water is many fathoms deep there.
Okay. Now, when the man said the next morning, I am perfectly fine, Sujao drew his kimono around his weary body. He could not, he decided, suddenly go through another night. It was not that he cared for this young man's life. No, simply it was not worth the strain. Now, the pressure, the strain, the worry was increasing day by day, night after night for Dr. Sudao. So he was very much now desperate to get rid of this problem, to get rid of this white man, right? So when the assassins didn't turn up for 3 nights, Dr. Sudao decided something of his own. He asked the white man, you are well? And he lowered his voice. You are so well that I think if I put my boat on the shore tonight with food and extra clothing in it, you might be able to row to that little island not far from the coast. So that was a decision that Dr. Sudao had taken. Means he decided that he will be giving a boat to the white man with food, clothing, and essentials, and he would let him go away that night, right? Means he's asking him that I'll provide you the essentials, and because I've saved your life, I cannot let you. I'm not killing you. I'm not doing anything wrong with you, and please run away, escape fast, right? So with food and extra clothing in it, you might be able to row to that little island not far from the coast. It is so near the coast that it has not been worth fortifying. So he says that there is an island and it is quite close to the coast. It is not very far off. Nobody lives on it because in storm, it is submerged. Nobody lives on that island because when the sea storm is there, this particular island, it gets submerged. It gets submerged in the sea. So, but this is not this season of storm, but this season is not when the storm comes. So you should live there until you saw a Korean fishing boat pass by. You have to stay there till the time you find a Korean fishing boat. Koreans come there for fishing purpose. So when you find a Korean fishing boat, then you have to seek their help. They pass quite near the island because the water is many fathoms deep there. The young man stared at him, slowly comprehending. Do I have to? He asked. Now the young man slowly trying to understand what he's saying. He says, do I have to? I mean, do it's necessary for me to run away from this place? But then, I mean, we can find that the white man has also, he was so comfortable in the house. He has got medical help from doctor. The doctor has saved his life. And perhaps he feels more secure in that house now. So he questions that, do I actually need to go away? Right? So Dr. Sudhao, obviously he wants that he should go away because he doesn't want that name of a cheater, a person who has deceived his motherland should not be connected to his name. So it's affecting his reputation, it's affecting his life, it's affecting his and his family's future. Fine. So I think so, Sudhao said gently, you understand it is not hidden that you are here. So he says it's not hidden anymore that you are here because the servants have already left the house and the servants can inform anybody. So it might create a problem for Dr. Sudhao. Just a second, please. Continue further, Ankita.
The young man no- the young man nodded in perfect comprehension. Okay, he said simply. Sadao did not see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the stout boat down to the shore, and in it he put food and bottled water that he had bought secretly during the day, as well as 2 quilts he had bought as a pawn shop. The boat he tied to a post in the water, for the tide was high. There was no moon, and he worked without a flashlight.
Okay, Sudhao did not see him again until evening. As soon as it was dark, he had dragged the stout boat down to the shore and in it he put food and bottled water that he had bought secretly during the day. So secretly he had brought some essentials, food, water, in fact, everything. And then the boat he tied to a post in the water for the tide was high. There was no moon and he worked without the flashlight. So without a light, he worked, he tied everything, he made a boat and he ensured that the man escapes. Please continue further.
When he came to the house, he entered as though he were just back from his work, and so Hannah knew nothing. Yumi was here today, she said as she served his supper. Though she was so modern, still she did not eat with him. Yumi cried over the baby. She went on with a sigh. She misses him so. The servants will come back as soon as the foreigner is gone, Sadao said.
Okay, so when he came to the house, he entered. So he had given him the boat, he had given him everything. And when he came to the house, he entered as though he was just back from his work. And so Hannah knew nothing. So when he entered in, he came back as if he was back from his work. So Hannah was not aware what he had done, right? So Yumi was here today, she said, as she served his supper. So Hannah tells her husband that Yumi was here as she served his supper. Though she was so modern, still she did not eat with him. Yumi cried over the baby. She went on with a sigh. She misses him so. So Hannah is telling Dr. Sudhao that Yumi was there and Yumi was crying because she missed the baby very much. The servants will come back as soon as the foreigner is gone, Sudhao said. So the servants, Dr. Sudhao says, I know, Hannah, you are in trouble, but the servants would surely come back as soon as the foreigner goes out of our house. Please continue further. ये बेटा अब end तक पढ़ दीजिएगा. We are almost at the end of the chapter. I think this is the last page. We still have a page more. ठीक है. आप ये end तक पढ़ लीजिएगा लेकिन ये वाला page complete कर लीजिएगा.
He went into the guest room that night before he went to bed himself and checked carefully the American's temperature, the state of the wound, and his heart and pulse. The pulse was irregular, but that was perhaps because of excitement. The young man's pale lips were pressed together and his eyes burned. Only the scars on his neck were red. I realize you are saving my life again, he told Sadao. Not at all, Sadao said. It is only inconvenient to have you here any longer. He had hesitated a good deal about giving the man a flashlight, but he had decided to give it to him after all. It was a small one, his own, which he used at night when he was cold. If your food runs out before you catch a boat, he said, signal me two flashes at the same instant the sun drops down over the horizon. Do not signal in darkness, for it will be seen. If you are all right but still there, signal me once. You will find fresh fish easy to catch, but you must eat them raw. A fire would be seen. Okay, the young man breathed.
Okay. Now he went into the guest room that night before he went to bed himself and checked carefully that the American's temperature, the state of the wound, and his heart and pulse. So he checked everything, that he was perfectly fine. He was in a good condition. The pulse was irregular, but that was perhaps because of excitement, because the man was led to run away. The young man's pale lips were pressed together and his eyes burnt. Only the scars on his neck were red. Only the scars were red because of fear or excitement. I realize you are saving my life again, he told Sudao. So the white man told Dr. Sudao that I understand that you are saving my life. Not at all, Sudao said. It is only inconventional to have you here any longer. So Dr. Sudao says it's not about saving your life. It's inconventional that I would have you anymore in my house. But see, actually, if you see, Dr. Sudao in a manner is saving his life. Dr. Sudao could have handed him over to the police, telling him that I found this man here. He would have been saved, right? But he was not doing that. He wanted to get rid of him. At the same time, perhaps he didn't want himself into trouble, but at the same time, he didn't want the man also to be in trouble, right? Or somewhere we can say this was the easiest method. He had accepted the offer of the general also to send his assassins and get the man murdered. But then this was the easiest method for him to get rid of this man. So he had hesitated a good deal about giving the man a flashlight, but he had decided to give it to him after all. It was a small one, his own, which he used at night when he was cold. So he gave that flashlight to him because it was all dark. It was a no moon night, and it would be difficult for the man to, locate things also which were kept in the boat. So in order to help him, he just gave him his small flashlight. If your food runs out before you catch a boat, he said, signal me two flashes at the same instant. The sun drops over the horizon. Do not signal in darkness. He says, if your food runs out before you catch a boat, if your food, the essentials which he has provided him, if they're exhausted before he finds a Korean boat, then he tells him that you send me the signal me with two flashlights. दो बड़ी flashlights कर देना, and that will be visible that you do not have more food, right? So do not signal in darkness, for it will be seen. He says, do not send me the signal in complete dark, because then it will be visible to everybody. So if you are all right, but still there, signal me once. And if you are perfectly fine and you are still there, then show me that flashlight only once. You will find fresh fish easy to catch, but you must eat them raw. A fire would be seen. He says that you can find fresh fish there from the sea and you can eat it. You can even cook it, but the fire could be seen. So it's better if you eat the fish raw in case your food is exhausted. Okay, the young man breathed. चलिए बेटा कंटिन्यू करिए अंकिता.
He was dressed now in the Japanese clothes which Sadao gave him, and at last moment Sadao wrapped a black cloth around his blond head. Now Sadao said, the young American, without a word, shook Sadao's hand warmly, and then walked quite well across the floor and down the step into the darkness of the garden. Once, twice, Sadao saw his light flash to find his way, but that would not be suspected. He waited until from the shore there was one more flash. Then he closed the partition. That night he slept. You say the man escaped? The journal asked faintly. He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation to which Sadao had been called in the night. For 12 hours Sadao had not been sure the journal would live. The gallbladder was much involved. Then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassins. So far as he knew, they had never come. The servants had returned, and Yumi had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and had burned sulfur in it to get the white man's smell out of it. Nobody said anything. Only the gardener was cross because he had got behind with his chrysanthemums, but after weeks Sadao felt the journal was well enough to spoke to about the prisoner. Yes, Excellency, he has escaped. Sadao now said. He coughed, signifying that he had not said all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the journal further. But the old man opened his eyes suddenly. That prisoner, he said with some energy, did I not promise you I would kill him for you?
Okay. Now he was dressed now in the Japanese clothes which Sadao had given him, and at the last moment Sadao wrapped a black cloth about his blonde head. Now Sadao said. The young American without a word shook Sadao's hand warmly. So he in a manner expressed his gratitude. He was very grateful to him because he has saved his life. And then he walked quite well across the floor and down the step into the darkness of the garden. So into the darkness of the garden, and he moved out. Once, twice, Sadao saw his light flash to find his way, but that would not be suspected. He waited until from the shore there was one more flash. So when he reached there was one more flash. Then he closed the partition. That night he slept. So that night, Sadao slept easily because he was relieved that the white man was out of his house now. You say the man escaped? The general asked faintly. Now, the next time when he went to the general, he said, the general is questioning him. You are saying that the man escaped? He had been operated upon a week before, an emergency operation to which Sadao had been called in the night. There was an emergency operation required for the general, so he had operated him. For 12 hours, Sadao had not been sure that the general would live or not. The gallbladder was much involved. Then the old man had begun to breathe deeply again and to demand food. So the old man gained back his conscience and he asked for food. Sadao had not been able to ask about the assassins. General was not in a condition that Sadao would ask him that what about the assassins? You promised me to send the assassins. General ने कहा था ना assassins भेजने के लिए, but then the assassins didn't turn up. So he was not in a condition कि Dr. Sadao से question कर सकता. So far as he knew, they had never come. The servants had returned and Yumi had cleaned the guest room thoroughly and had burnt sulfur in it to get the white man's smell out of it. So Yumi had cleaned the house properly और उसमें उसके room में sulfur जला कर दिया था so that there is no smell of the white man. Nobody said anything. Only the gardener was cross because he had got behind his white chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemums, I need to check the meaning, right? But after a week, Sadao felt the general was well enough to be spoken to about the prisoner. So after a week, Sadao felt कि अब general ठीक था, so he can discuss about it. Yes, Excellency, he escaped. Sadao now said. He coughed, signifying that he had not said all he might have said, but was unwilling to disturb the general further. So, but the old man opened his eyes suddenly. So he opened his eyes and said, that prisoner, he said with some energy, did I not promise you that I would kill him for you? So the general said, but I promised you that I would be killing him for you. I would be sending the assassins. You did, Excellency, Sadao said. Well, the old man said in a tone of amazement, so I did. But you see, I was suffering a good deal. The truth is, I thought of nothing but myself. In short, I forgot my promise to you. So here, the character of the general is revealed. He said, I knew I promised it to you, but I was so much thinking about myself कि मैं भूल गया. I forgot it completely that I have to send the assassins there to your house to kill the white man. So I wondered, Your Excellency, Sadao murmured. So Sadao said, I wondered, how can you forget such a thing? It was certainly very careless of me, the general said, but you understand it was not lack of patriotism or dedication of duty. He looked anxiously at the doctor. If the matter should come out, you would understand that, wouldn't you? So he says that it's not कि मैं अपनी duty नहीं करना चाहता था or it was not that lack of patriotism. It is simply I forgot and I was careless. Certainly, and he tells कि ये matter बाहर नहीं आना चाहिए कि मैंने तुम्हें ऐसा offer किया था और फिर मैंने नहीं भेजा. Right? Certainly, Your Excellency, Sadao said. He certainly comprehended that the general was in the palm of his hand and palm of his hand, and that as a consequence of himself was perfectly safe. I can swear to your loyalty, Excellence, he said to the old general, and to your zeal against the enemy. So he says, I swear to you, General, by all these people, that I'm not going to utter a word to anybody about it. You are a good man, the general murmured and closed his eyes. You will be rewarded. So the general says, you are a nice man and you will be rewarded. But Sadao, searching the spot of black in the twilighted sea that night, had his reward. So he spotted that black, he got his reward. There was no prick of light in the dusk. So there was no light at all. No one was on the island. His prisoner was gone, safe, doubtless, for he had warned him to wait only for a Korean fishing boat. So because he could not see any flashlight, it was very clear to him that the man has left. He could not see anybody. Perhaps he was waiting for the Korean fish boat. So Korean fishing boat mill gई and the man had escaped from the island also. He stood for a moment on the veranda, gazing out to the sea from whence the young man had come that other night, and into his mind, although without reason, there came other white faces he had known. So he remembered how the man had come to the sea, how much injured he was, and he could recall other white faces जिनको वो जानता था. The professor at whose house he had met Hannah, a dull man, and his wife uh, had been a silly talkative woman. The professor's wife was a silly talkative woman जिनके घर पे वो गया था when he was in America, and there only he had met Hannah. In spite of a wish to be kind, he remembered his old teacher of anatomy who had been so insistent on mercy with the knife, and then he remembered the face of his fat, slatternly landlady. So जब वो अमेरिका में था, वो वहां पर जो white men से वो मिला है, he recalled all these people. Now he had great difficulty in finding a place to live in America because he was a Japanese. The Americans were full of prejudice and it had been bitter to live in it. So he was recalling that when he went to America, he realized that the Americans, they were full of prejudice for the Japanese. Now, how he had been despised the ignorant and dirty old women who had at last consented to house him in a miserable home. He had once tried to be grateful to her because she had in his last year nursed him through influenza. So he recalled the landlady who had permitted him to stay in his house, in the dirty, filthy house. But once he was grateful to her because he had cured her. He had taken care of him at the time when Dr. Sadao was suffering from influenza, जब वो अमेरिका में थे. But it was difficult for she was